We're working on a very special car today, the 2003 Ford Mustang SVT Cobra, aka the Terminator. No, not that Terminator, this one. We have a set of distressed headlights out of our Terminator Mustang, and these things are beat down, and we have to do something about them. We really have four options. Option number one, we could do nothing. All right, we could just leave them in there. Aesthetically, they do not look pleasing. The bad thing about leaving them in there too is the function of them. It actually is being compromised. When lights start to yellow or fade or crack, especially at nighttime, you do lose visibility. So option one, I don't like. Option two, I could sand and polish them. I'm not a big fan, especially in this situation. These ones are too far gone. Plus, if the clear coat on these lights have been compromised and you sand and polish them, all you're doing is removing that protective layer, and it will buy you some time, but it's not really a fix. So the sand and polish is out for me. I could buy new ones. All right, I got a couple options. I could go out to the dealership and buy some brand new OEM ones. That might be your best option. But these headlights are $1,000 a piece if you walked into a Ford dealership and ordered them, assuming you could get them. Yeah, you could go on Amazon or eBay and buy a set of aftermarket ones. What I don't like about that is typically aftermarket headlights, the quality's not there. This is a very expensive and a very important car, and he wants to keep it forever. So we're not a big fan of aftermarket headlights in this situation for this car. That brings us to our only real option. Option number four, we're gonna restore these headlights. These particular headlights have a gasket. The only way to do this properly is to remove them. I'm always gonna remove the headlights from the vehicle. I'm not a big fan of leaving the headlights in the car and masking them up. So once they're out of the vehicle, I'm gonna wash them with soap and water. This prevents any kind of contaminations in the future that may occur. I like to wash the front and back thoroughly, rinse them, and get them dry. Pro tip, don't be like us. Take some masking tape and cover the holes to avoid getting water inside of the lenses. I like to use a plastic cleaner. You don't necessarily have to do this. We're using PPG's SX103. We're starting off super aggressive. This is what we call the grip it and rip it step. Because our headlights have so much dead clear and we want to remove 100% of that coating, we decided to start with a palm sander and 320 grit. Now I realize that some of you might not be comfortable with this. You could use some 400 grit wet sanding paper and do this by hand. Whatever you do, make sure you remove 100% of that old dead clear, because if you don't, what's going to happen is when you go to clear these things, you're going to actually see rings in them. If you notice right here, we have some of the clear off, but there's still clear existing in this little area. You want to get 100% of that off before you proceed to the next step. I like to work in a round of guide coat here because I'm really worried about those coarse grit scratches that we just put in it with the DA. By applying this dry guide coat, I can come in and wet sand this guy out with a 400 or 600 grit wet. We're finally to the fun part. We're off to the races. Dave and I are going to tag team these headlights, and we're going to start with 600 to get all of this black guide coat. After that, we're going to re-guide coat them, and we're going to go 800 grit wet. Ultimately, I like to clear over an 800 grit wet. We're going to actually work in another round, which you don't necessarily have to do, but I'm going to use a little gray Scotch Brite and some Sem soap just to make sure that I get all of my edges and I work all of that guide coat off, because I definitely do not want to apply my clear and have some guide coat in the corners. When I'm done with that, I can rinse them off and get them clean and dry. Now we're going to mask these bad boys up. A lot of people skip this step because they don't care about getting a little bit of overspray on the back side of the headlights. I disagree. I think it's a very unprofessional look to have overspray all over a part. It just takes a few minutes to tape these up correctly. It also keeps any kind of dirt locked in, and I want to keep these as clean as possible, in the rare event that I would get overspray inside of the lens. So I definitely am a big fan of masking these properly, and then I can come in and use my SX103 again to do the final clean. You don't have to wait to your final steps of cleaning to do this. Here's another reason why I like the SX103, is we call this step a wet out. I'm gonna spray this with my plastic cleaner to make sure that there's no scratches, that there's no remaining clear coat. It's really hard to tell sometimes when it's this flat look. I don't like using wax and grease, traditional solvent wax and grease on body fillers, aka Bondo or raw plastic. All right, a lot of people do it, but I'd rather use a product like this. They do make different kind of panel check products. Eastwood sells them, but make sure whatever you're using is safe for raw plastic. Couple final steps before we apply our adhesion promoter and we go to ClearCoat. Some people like to just tack it, which is fine. Make sure you tack off the paper around it. I personally like a blow tack. So I'm applying a little bit of air and I'm tacking at the same time. That way I'm loosening stuff up. So I prefer a blow tack on all the parts. Once that's done, I like to use a static gun, especially on raw plastic parts. This really helps cut down the dirt because a lot of the dirt is attracted to this plastic part. If you don't have a static gun, it's fine. The SX103 can be used in place of it. Just put it in a gun, spray on a medium wet coat, wait 5 minutes, and proceed to the next steps. Every adhesion promoter is different. When you're using a ClearCoat over raw plastic, you absolutely want to use an adhesion promoter. You have to watch out because some adhesion promoters contain like a metal flake in them, like almost like a metallic. So this one does not contain any flake, and I'm following either the P sheet, the technical data sheet, or the information on the back of the can to the T. We're using PPG's DC4000 clear, and it's a very good clear, very strong clear. In all reality, you can use any high quality 2K clear in this spot. I don't recommend using rattle can clear for restoring headlights. It just doesn't have the durability. Yeah, it's cheaper, yeah, it's easier, but you don't really have the strength. And we put a lot of time and a lot of work in these. I want these to last a lifetime, if that is such a thing. Now here's a good trick for you guys. Let's say that you're scared on clearing a complicated part. And I'll admit that these headlights are not complicated for most people. But let's say it's a bumper and you're scared that you're gonna run it. You can do what we refer to as a tack coat, meaning your first coat of clear, you do not put it on 100% wet. You come in with a 70, 80% wet, allow it to flash, and then your next coat or coats, you do 100% wet. What that's gonna do is limit the chance of you running it, but the downside of doing something like that is you typically gain more texture, aka orange peel, and then your film thickness, meaning how much materials you have, is gonna be less. So it's safer, but there's always a downside. Please take the time to like and subscribe to our channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps David and I out. Now, if you notice on our headlights, they're not 100% perfect. There's still some damage on the inside of the lenses. We talked to the customer about actually taking the lenses off the body to make them 100% perfect. He wasn't interested in that, and he was happy with the way that they turned out, so they are what they are. Hopefully you learned a lot in this video. We actually have another video that is closely related to this on how to tint your taillights with a bunch of information that's super helpful. If you like that one, you can click right here.